Well, thousands of people are expected to attend the funeral of New York City police officer Randolph Holder this afternoon. He died after being shot in the head while chasing a suspect last week. His funeral comes just one day after President Obama spoke to law enforcement in Chicago and tried to walk a fine line between supporting police officers and acknowledging strained relations with some communities.
We've had African American and Latino communities who've pointed to racial disparities in the application of criminal justice, from arrest rates to sentencing to incarceration rates. And all too often those concerns, no matter how well documented, have been brushed aside. And we can't have a situation in which a big chunk of the population feels like maybe the system isn't working as well for them. At the same time, too often, law enforcement gets scapegoated for the broader failures of our society and our criminal justice system.
Well, earlier in the speech, the president also pushed back against the idea that police are struggling to stop crime because they're worried about increased scrutiny.
It is true that in some cities, including here in my hometown of Chicago, gun violence and homicides have spiked. But the fact is that so far, at least across the nation, the data shows that we are still enjoying historically low rates of violent crime. Moreover, over the past few years, the number of police officers shot and killed in the line of duty has fallen to their lowest levels in decades. Of course, each victim of crime is one too many. Each fallen police officer is one too many.
All right, so, Leif, there is a perception among many that this White House really has been putting out some anti-cop rhetoric. And I'll go back to Ferguson, and I want to start by saying no police force is perfect. You can't sort of paint a broad brush over everybody. But when we go back to Ferguson, you saw the DOJ react in a way that they put out a report that called the police force basically inherently, institutionally, I believe the quote was racist. They also sent administration officials to the funeral of Michael Brown and others, but they don't send administration officials when there's a fallen police officer down in your home state of Texas as recently as just 1 month ago. So is that criticism fair?
I think this president has fanned the flames of these issues, and he's got to own that. He's definitely not. He's trying to walk both lines right now, and he really can't do that. I mean, I've got a lot of friends in law enforcement, a lot of guys that I served with in the military that have gone into law enforcement, or reservists that were part-time military but full-time law enforcement. And my hat's off to these guys. They're on the home front, keeping us safe, and certainly not every officer's perfect, absolutely, but I think when you see something like this, it's absolutely horrible, and just I'm warned that for that officer's family, and I think the president needs to take ownership of fanning some of these issues and these flames.
Well, I tell you that you're an expert on it. I mean, your book, Extreme Ownership, that's what we're talking about. I have to say, Andrea, in all fairness, I did see the president try to walk toward the line of recognizing what our police officers do. And then he kind of walked back a little bit, and he was trying to straddle some things there. What I thought might have been missing, and we talked about this yesterday, he's in Chicago. He's not in like some other foreign country. He's in Chicago, where the stats are staggering, in the black community particularly. Okay, and not to make this about that's a black president, so he's the only one who can solve it, but can we at least talk about the elephant in the room? 75% of the victims and 75% or better of the perpetrators in the large number of shooting crimes in Chicago, the city of Chicago, are among African Americans. I didn't hear him talking about a jobs program. I didn't hear him talking about meeting with, community leaders to try to find some answers within a very tumultuous area. And you've lived in Chicago. If you look at like a pushpin map, all the red is concentrated where particularly African Americans live.
Well, and you don't hear the president talk about the breakdown of the family, the importance of father, which I think he would be an incredible speaker on that topic.
Very inspirational.
Because he is a good father and he is devoted. I mean, speak from what he knows. I mean, that's what really troubles me is you had an opportunity yesterday, Sandra, in your hometown to stand up and talk about that and talk about illegal guns, the guns that are actually doing the killing, not legal guns of law-abiding Americans.
Well, he didn't introduce any more gun control or call for any more gun control while he was there. I think that was a little bit surprising, but I do agree with Harris that he did walk towards that line. But if he was truly trying to make that move, Harris, why not acknowledge James Comey, the FBI director's recent comments about the spike in violence being tied to police officers hesitating to do their jobs because what we have been seeing and happen in U.S. cities? Why not go there? Why not acknowledge that that is a serious problem that these communities face as we look forward?
Absolutely. You know why, Rachel?
Because he's already said he doesn't believe it.
Well, that's right, because his mouthpiece, Josh Earnest, stepped out and said, no, our own FBI director, James Comey, is wrong. And I also want to talk about those statistics. The president said crime is down. It is not down in major cities. And the reason that they're hiding behind these faulty statistics is because they're reclassifying it. So if 83 people are shot one weekend in Chicago, they count it as one incident, not 83 victims. And by the way, medical care has gotten so much better. People are living, they're surviving the attacks. And that's why they can go out there and say that. It's not because violence is down.
And I'm just saying this, my father was a public school teacher, and I remember my mother saying to my dad at the dinner table, don't engage with those kids because, you know, I don't want our pension to be on the line here. I don't want you to have an incident. Believe me, there are cop spouses that are out there telling their spouses at home, listen, take it easy. I don't want some YouTube moment and our family, you know, income and pension is on the line. Of course, these videos and this environment is having an impact on whether a police officer decides to step in or not. And it doesn't surprise me that these statistics are skyrocketing in places like Chicago.
Well, from that very important topic to politics again, it appears Hillary Clinton is changing course on her comments about the VA scandal. In a televised interview last Friday, the Democratic frontrunner said the issues of wait times are not as widespread as it's been made out to be. Well, why would anybody make that up? And she accused Republicans of politicizing the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, her campaign says. Her remarks were, quote, misconstrued, and that Hillary Clinton is outraged. Republicans in Washington and on the campaign trail pounced on Clinton's initial remarks. Senator John McCain of Arizona, home to the VA hospital at the center of the scandal, as you'll think back, has demanded now an apology. All this as Donald Trump appears to be trying to make veterans a big part of his campaign. Yesterday, a dramatic moment when he stepped off the stage in Iowa to speak to a wounded veteran and pledged to do everything he can to get him the care that he needs. Watch.
You're going to write out your card, and I am going to put pressure on the VA like you won't believe. Let's see if we can get that, right? Look how beautiful. As president, I can guarantee it. As Trump, I can say I'll probably be able to pull it off anyway. Because they know it won't stop. It'll be easier to take Todd and just say, look, we're going to work with you, Todd, okay?
You know what? If you have been following Donald Trump even before he ran for president, you know that this is an issue that's at the center of what he believes in. Your thoughts?
It's a huge issue, definitely. And I think Hillary Clinton's absolutely wrong, and she certainly stepped into it. And I know veterans appreciate Donald Trump coming out and swinging on those issues. I mean, it's just an example of a giant government bureaucracy that just cannot deliver the services they need, and then covers it up and creates this to protect themselves rather than actually take ownership of mistakes and try to fix those mistakes.
You know, I've asked this before, I think, when you and I weren't on TV, because we've talked about this before. Do you think that it is time or there's a necessity for the person in the White House to be military background? Is that necessary?
Look, I think as commander-in-chief, I think that's something that is of great benefit, certainly, and I think that matters a lot to have military service, and particularly combat experience. I think is important, but you definitely don't need that. You definitely don't need it. You can be a leader who listens, if you simply if you simply bring in the right people that you can listen to, but you certainly have to acknowledge mistakes and own failures so that you can figure out a solution to solve them.
I just like to say there is nothing that has shown how out of touch Hillary Clinton is than this comment, because other than veterans, nobody knows better how dysfunctional the Veterans Administration is than members of Congress. She's a former senator, the busiest caseworkers, and I can tell you this from my own husband's
on
office.
The Armed Services Committee.
On the Armed Services, exactly. The busiest caseworkers are those dealing with veteran benefits. In fact, in my husband's office, we have one caseworker that all he does is deal with veterans things because there's such a backlog. It's so dysfunctional. They lose records. And by the way, she quoted a survey as proof that, things are fine at the VA. 300,000 veterans died on a waiting list. You can't fill out a survey if you're dead. So this is a person who is seriously out of touch, and I think this should be absolutely held against her, and every veteran should just be outraged.
Well, right. We'll check the number on that. Leif, I'm curious, you have friends, colleagues, people that you've served with coming back. What's their experience? I mean, that's firsthand. Well,
the experience is to try to get all the services you can and the help you can, particularly for guys that are seriously wounded while you're active, because you're going to go into this backlog when you get into the VA.
Would you prefer more private hospital choices? I mean, people are wondering if Donald Trump's going to go that route. Is he talking about better VA hospitals, improving them or adding to them, or is he going to offer more of a private healthcare situation?
I think competition is always great, and certainly private hospitals can do it.
And if you're in a rural area, you can't travel 300 miles.
He should get behind a voucher system like they do with charter schools. And the same way that Wall Street money, Sandra, funds a lot of these charter schools, Donald Trump should announce tonight he's going to put a hospital right next to a VA hospital and offer vouchers so veterans can choose and use some Wall Street money to fund it. That would be brilliant.
Well, if he did that, it'll be interesting to see if Hillary Clinton will be tweeting while she watches the debate. All right, an exercise sparks debate over faith in a public school classroom. Have you heard about this? A 7th grader is defending her belief in God after the teacher reportedly said God is a myth. Did the teacher cross the line? We debate it. Stay close.